What is up, everyone? This is Hater Radio. This is the college football media brand that we do every week, every Sunday and Wednesday. But hey, you know what? I couldn't make it Sunday. We had to make it today on Monday. Yesterday or Saturday night, I was in Gainesville for the game. I drove to my parents' place like 2 hours to Brooksville. Got like maybe 2 hours of sleep, drove to TPA airport at like 3-4 in the morning, got on a flight at 5:30 to Denver, then a flight to Long Beach, and then like an hour and 15-minute bus ride home because the bus went the opposite direction. And yeah, so I had a hellacious little end there. So I didn't get much sleep, and I slept from like 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday till 6 p.m. last night. So no show yesterday, but here we are. I watched as much as I could to get up to speed about everything. I'm here with my co-host, Ian Gibson. How are you, Ian?
As a USF fan, I'm great. As a Florida fan, I'm terrible.
Yeah, I know. So it's the two worlds me and Ian live in, because we're both Florida fans and USF grads. So we're fans of both teams. So it's hard to be able to separate the two. I was at the game, and we're going to get into that game first and foremost, just because that was the most interesting for our podcast. At the game, it felt like, the crowd was like along for the ride, but then as the game wore on, the fans definitely got restless and were pissed off. USF fans were obviously into it the whole time, but their Florida fans were not happy, especially at the end. But Ian, I want to hear your thoughts on the game, and then I'll go into mine.
Yeah, so first thing, I want to make it abundantly clear. I'm going to give USF their flowers. That was easily the biggest win for the program since the 2007 game against West Virginia and maybe the 2010 matchup where they beat Notre Dame on the road. USF also has the distinction as being the first group of 5 team to beat all 3 of the big 3 Florida schools. They beat Florida State in 2008, Miami in 2010, and now Florida. UCF, Florida Atlantic, FIU do not have those to their resume. So that's something I thought I'd mention as well for USF. The game plan was fantastic. They were able to spread out Florida's defense and give Byron Brown the running room he needed for those, big runs that he had a lot of. They really played it to the outside, and that clearly showed a weakness on the Florida defensive front. And it was just a well-coached game in general. USF did a very good job staying out of their way, and they were in it. They were obviously motivated to win it, and when it came down to it, they found a way to win. And like I said, fantastic win. This is a huge win for USF and the program. And now you can build off of this for the rest of the year. Obviously, they go on the road to Miami, which will be a much tougher team now. And the thing with me as a USF fan is that we have seen them do this. And again, the biggest example is 2007 with the West Virginia game.
Yeah,
they were rolling, they were running, and they somehow will trip themselves up against teams that they are better at. And unfortunately, the past 2 years with Golish, we have seen him lose games where he should have won. So now we know they can win. Now it's about keeping, living up to those expectations and moving forward with them. Because now you cannot lose these games in conference to teams like Rice or North Texas. You are now expected as the front runner of the AAC. Now it is finally time for USF to live up to those expectations, because they unfortunately haven't from, the 2007 season. 2010 was another year they had that chance in the Big East. 2016 and 17 as well. It's now time for USF to carry on this, because now they have shown 2 weeks in a row they can hang with a lot of these really good teams, and teams that are frankly better than most of their toughest competition in the AAC. Now, flipping the other side of the coin, I listened to a song. One of my favorite artists is Tame Impala, and the song he had from one of his first breakout albums was New Person, Same Mistakes. That is a very, very, very good song to listen to if you're a Gator fan, because it was the same old show that we have seen over and over and over again since Billy Napier has become head coach, and even before that with Dan Mullen towards the latter. Completely anemic play calling. He clearly has no trust in Lagway. And I watched Seth's breakdown. Lagway does not look comfortable. I don't know if the injury is fully healed. It is probably rust, but the play calling is not benefiting him. And I said at the very beginning of the year, play calling will be put under an even more intense microscope, because this is the best team Napier has had since he has come in at Florida. This is the best quarterback he has had since he's come into Florida. So with that, you can only put 16 points on the board, and I don't care who you're playing. 16 points is unacceptable in any game. And obviously, like, I give more praise to USF. That defense has completely turned a new corner. Mac Miller and them have become monsters in the middle of the field. But that is no excuse for having 2 touchdowns called back on a holding and a pass interference. That is no excuse for having over 11 penalties for over 100 yards called on you. That is no excuse to be running the ball at 3rd and long. And of course, the bet spinning thing, that's our new cleat throw on the final drive of the game. I've said this, like, I'm sounding like a broken record, and I'm not going to go too deep into the other rants I've had, but I will clearly just say the same thing. What else do you have to see at Florida to know this is not working? It is not working, because this was a game. This was the easy game. Like, we knew, me and you, Chris, we knew this was not like USF was going to play them tough. Any in-state game will be like that.
Yeah.
But Florida didn't even show up. And that is the part that is the most disturbing and troubling. We're in year 4, and Napier still cannot find a way to get the Gators motivated to play a game, no matter who it is. They were clearly looking ahead. What I saw was a team that wanted to win and deserved to win, and a team that was just going through the motions, that was just expecting USF to lay down and die. And you would think Napier would know better, because 3 years ago in his first year, he almost lost to USF, and that team was way worse than this one.
Yeah.
Instead, it was the same old motion where they just expected to win, and it doesn't happen in college football. Like I said, I don't know what else you could see at Florida to know this just isn't going to work. I understand letting go of Napier has ramifications. You likely lose a lot of the roster. You likely lose Lagway. But if this is the best Napier can do with this team, this is not acceptable at Florida. I'm sorry. It just is not. No matter how good the players are, I always worried it would be coaching to get in the way, and unfortunately it has. And again, the only way to go through this is to find somebody else. I don't know who that is, but I know it's not Napier. Because you can't look at them losing to USF last Saturday and look at the schedule moving on and say, yeah, I feel like they can, beat Texas in the Swamp. I feel like they will play up to a Mississippi State team that just beat Arizona State. I do feel like they'll handle a red-hot Florida State team in the Swamp. I don't see it. I just don't see it.
Well, I'm going to first say, out of all this, like, I know I should have started this at the beginning of it, but this is probably the biggest win in the history of South Florida's program. I was there in Auburn in 2007 when they started that run, went to the number 2 team in the country and looked like they were destined for great things. And that was just the beginning. And then to fall off. And, I was there in the Skip Holtz era. I was in the athletic department that year when there was so much hype and we thought the things were going to change as well. And then it just never took off. Really only under Willie Taggart was there any kind of promise. And then the promise kind of wilted once Charlie Strong took over, and that was it. So we have rehashed this a million times. We all know the history. But this game, after beating Boise State 34-7, knocking them off, looking amazing in that game, doing wonderful things on defense, and then coming into this game with a lot of hype behind DJ Lagway in Florida, and to get the victory is huge. It is monumental that USF won this game. Now, I will say if Florida had won this game, the fans still would have been pissed off no matter what, because they would have been mad that they even let USF be in the game. And I get that for a second, but I also look at USF and I look how much better the defense is, how the defensive line was moving guys a lot and getting to DJ Lagway and preventing him from, with his legs getting first downs, which, would have been the difference in the game, but he couldn't get more than a couple yards anytime the play broke down. So credit to the defensive line and the linebackers there. Credit to Byron Brown, who played a masterful game. He wasn't, perfect in the game, but he made plays and he did not make many mistakes. And he put passes where they needed to be. And, that play where he hurried up the offense to get up and force Florida to try to make something out of the play where they were like illegal substitutions. And he just threw it up there knowing that they had the free play, and they score on that. And that was the turning point in the game. That and the safety, like literally the safety off the bad snap from a All-American long snapper, goes into the end zone. And that's the difference in the game. Because if they don't score that 2 points, they may not be going for a tie there at the end. They may have been going for the touchdown instead to try to win it. And maybe they don't get it. So that was a huge change in the game right there, the safety, which probably doesn't get talked about enough. But, I was sitting next to a Florida fan, as the game was near the end of the half, and they were already frustrated. And I was telling them, I'm like, look, USF is good. I wasn't wearing USF colors or Florida colors, so no one really could tell who I was rooting for. I had my Tampa Bay hat on like I have right now, and I had my Hater Radio shirt. So I was neutral, and I tried to be as neutral as I can because I like both of these teams, and I just wanted to see a good game. And literally, I saw a good game. It was to literally the last play of the game until it was decided. So, I'm glad it went the way it did, because this is more monumental for USF. Like, losing this game is not the end of the world for Florida, because even if they were to go on a good run, they could still win out most of their games and still get into the playoff at like 9-3 or 8-4 potentially. So a loss here to a now ranked USF is not the end of the world. For USF, it's huge. It changes everything for them. You got the OCS coming up, hopefully a potential move to a bigger conference. You got Alex Golish, who is a massive rising star in the coaching ranks. And, you've got a lot of movement. Athletics at USF is rising. This is a great win. This is so huge for South Florida. I know that Florida fans are hurt and they want Billy gone. And you know what? It is what it is, because if he gets fired here, the cupboard is full right now. There is a ton of talent on this roster. And maybe DJ stays, maybe he doesn't, but Trammell Jones might stay as well, because, he knows he's going to get a shot. And so you have potential here, even if Billy is gone. And if, it really like sets the stage. Either Billy gets fired or Billy turns it around and then move forward. So like, it's a win-win at this point. I don't really care. It's the beginning of the season. We are 2 games in. It is a long stretch. They have a ton of tough games. It is 10 games to go. They have to prove themselves, and it starts next week against LSU. So why that people are jumping off ship right away? The problem is that Florida fans do not give any credence to USF, and that is the problem, because USF is a very talented group with a very immensely talented coach who is outclassed Billy Napier, like 100%. That is the biggest thing that happened in this game. It showed that Alex Golesh is a better coach than Billy Napier, and it's just proven the entire game. Alex Golesh just masterfully, navigated that game while Billy struggled with a lot of plays. Play calling was suspect like usual. I'll get into a little bit of why Florida lost. Well, you got to think about, let's think about those drives where they were inside the 20, inside the red zone, and they couldn't convert. There was the first drive, which was scripted beautifully. And I will hand it to Billy for that, because they were able to get down the field really quickly, and they were in position to score. Livingston drops one, and then there's 2 penalties on touchdowns that get called back. So in this game, you had Florida moving the ball pretty consistently in the first half, and they resulted in 3 field goals. If they score 2 touchdowns there, that game instead is an 8-point difference. So it's 17-6. 17-6 looks a lot better than 9-6 going into half. And then if they're able to convert on other plays into the game, Vernell Brown, the third on that third down play, that actually was a very well-crafted play. And Vernell was open enough to get it. It was on his hands. He just couldn't reel it in. It was a great throw by DJ, who struggled most of the day, but this throw was there. It was on the money. It was a perfect position, and he couldn't reel it in. And that was the difference in the game, really. If he makes that catch, then, Florida's, probably running out the clock, and they win by 1. And the fans are still upset. So what does it matter? If they lose or they win, they still would have been upset regardless, and they would have been like calling for his head. So, they lose, and it's not the end of the world for Florida. USF wins, and it ends up being a huge deal. So as a fan of both, I'm happy that it went the way it did. And, going forward, it's going to settle itself out with Florida. Either Billy corrects the things that he needs to, which he showed to do last year, which a lot of people didn't believe in him, and he righted the ship, and they won 8 games. And then, or this year, it's going to be they don't, and he gets fired, and they move on, and the next coach that comes in probably takes advantage of the recruiting that has been pretty top tier the last couple of years. So either way, it's a win for Florida. I'm not upset. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I feel like there's a ton of talent, especially in the wide receiver core, and Jaden Baugh again looks like a man among boys. The guy is just a freak out there. And, I know this is a long diatribe, and I don't usually do too long, but I just feel like there's a lot of narrative going on right now between these two fans. I know the USF fans are upset about the ranking. I know it could help, but it is what it is. You know what? You beat Miami next week, and all doesn't matter, because you will be top 10 minimum if you beat Miami. So keep riding this high. You've got house money right now. Keep riding the streak, and then we'll see what's happened. We'll talk about that game on Wednesday. Ian, do you have any more thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, it's the last thing I'm just going to say is it's not even the fact of, speaking as the Gator fan here, because I knew USF was going to play them tough. It was the thing I don't believe in this is, again, they came out and played like a dead fish. There was no life. There was no energy. USF clearly had all the momentum, and they wanted to win. Florida just didn't care, and that is the most troubling sign. It reminded me of the Samford game when Dan Mullen was in the death throes, where they were just there to show up. And then when they realized, oh, we've got a game to play, they woke up. This game, they didn't wake up. And for me, that's all you need to know about how the team is coached, is when you can't get them ready for any game, that's a serious problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating. To look at it objectively, Billy has, played down to teams his entire tenure at Florida. And like you said, this is the most talented team he's had since he's been here. I feel like this loss is not the worst loss that Florida has had since he's been there. The Vandy loss was way worse. The Arkansas loss.
The Arkansas one was, yeah.
Yeah, there have been worse losses. Like, they had 11 penalties. They shot themselves in the foot countless times on drives where they should have ended in touchdowns. You know, I feel like DJ was rusty, and, you know, it's proven by the fact that he hasn't practiced at all for like 6 months. So you come into this game, you know, playing one practice game where it was against a tomato can. So, of course, you're not going to be up to snuff. And so this was his first real life action against a really solid defense, and he struggled. You know, he wasn't like the worst. Like, everyone seems to paint the picture like DJ was the worst he's done. I mean, 23 of 33 is not terrible. You know, that, and 222 yards. He did have, you know, a couple of nice throws to Hansen, and found Vernell Brown the third on some nice throws. And then, you know, Trey Wilson actually had a really decent game. You know, I know people have been giving him crap for just being that, like, that decoy that he does on the motion. But, you know, there were plays that actually got him open, and he got some yards. I mean, he had 7 receptions for 60 yards. They had, you know, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys with catches. You know, there was 3 of them with more than 40 yards of catch. 5 of them averaged 10 yards or more on a catches. So they were moving the ball a decent amount. It's just inside the 20s, they kind of shot themselves in the foot with the penalties. And, you know, USF's defense tightened up as well. And that's the thing. I think, like, Florida fans are just like, oh, USF's defense wasn't that great. No, they are that good.
Yeah.
They're, like, way better than I think people realize. And that's the difference. They've only allowed 23 points in 2 games to 2 25 top-ranked teams. Like, that's really dang good. Like, that's only averaging like 11.5 points allowed per game. I haven't looked it up, but I'm almost guaranteed that's tops in the country or close to it, considering the resume they have right now. So, you know, I know it's frustrating as UF fans, but you know what? This is what it is. Like, either he gets off the pot and makes the corrections that they need to, or he doesn't. I feel like the talent is there. I feel like the team is resilient. They were resilient last year. I feel like they're going to come back next week against LSU and prove something. You know, there's no reason to give up this early. I know it's easy because it's just, that's the thing with, you know, people's mentality for some reason. I don't give up. I never give up. I didn't give up when I got kicked out of law school and had to win an appeal to come back. I don't give up. And I don't like people that do give up. So I don't think Billy is that person. I think he sticks with it. You know, already Scott Strickland put out a statement saying that they're keeping him. So that's it. It is what it is. And the buyout's pretty heavy. So he's got a few more years and he's going to be there. So just ride this out. And hopefully next year is an easier schedule. And then you don't have to worry about something like this where it's now 10 ranked teams out of 12 that you play. It's kind of ridiculous, this schedule. Like, it is what it is. This is what you have to deal with. And again, if you win 9 games, maybe even 8, you probably get in the playoff with this schedule. So a loss to a potential playoff team is not the worst thing in the world. Let's move on because we've been talking about this way too long. Next one we got is let's do all the way from the beginning. Let's do Iowa State. You know, Iowa is such a, like, plotting, ridiculously ancient, archaic offense. And, you know, I saw some hype in the, like, talking season before week 1 about Gronowski or Gronowski. I don't know. How do you say it?
Gronowski.
Gronowski, like, making an amazing throw, and it was like, oh, that's just like an average throw for most quarterbacks. And of course, it was like hyped up by Iowa fans, but he looked good running the ball. You know, he was able to be effective, get some first downs and move them into position. They were aided by some bad play by Iowa State to get it to 13-10 game. But Iowa State is just a better team right now. And I just feel like, Becht looked good enough. He was not great. He was 18 of 27 for only 134 yards. But again, they kept Iowa's offense in check, which is easy to do because Iowa's offense isn't great. And they only had Gronowski only had 83 yards. So, Iowa State is a team that if they get on this roll, which they already started hot, they beat Kansas State, they beat Iowa, they looked good enough in this game. I think they can position themselves. They're going to obviously have to contend with Utah for that Big 12 crown, but winning 16-13, ugly, whatever. It's a rivalry game. You take the W and you move on. What do you got thoughts on this?
Yeah, and this game went exactly as how I thought it would. I thought it was going to be a low-scoring affair, and it was. I did pick Iowa only on the fact that I did expect, again, look, I know Iowa is not like an elite offense. Clearly, they're the opposite of that. But you really couldn't get more than 16 points because the defense did exactly what I thought it was. Becht had a fantastic touchdown pass in the game. But I was like, man, that offense needs to get just cross midfield, and then you're in striking distance. And it was always long field goals instead of, really going for the throat.
Yeah.
But yeah, it went, like I said, it was a typical Cyhawk game. It's low scoring. It's close. It's an old school affair. But yeah, Iowa State, they just made more big plays, flat out. And when it came down to it, that's what mattered. It's going to kill Iowa because, again, that win was there for the taking, and not being able to score more than 16 points is pretty troubling when your defense did that good of a job against Iowa State.
Okay, let's move on to Illinois Duke. This game was close in the first half, and I was watching it, and I thought Mensa looked pretty good outside that fumble that he lost, and they were moving on that drive as well. So, it was a close game. It was 14-13 at halftime, and it's like, okay, we'll see what happens. And then just Duke fell apart. Mensa threw an interception, had another fumble lost, and Duke, I believe, had at least one more fumble. Yeah, because
they had 4 fumbles.
Yeah, they had 4 fumbles lost. So they had 5 turnovers in total. They were moving the ball. They put up 438 yards of total offense, which is a great day, but they just could not finish off drives because of these turnovers. Illinois, Altmaier looked pretty good. He was making plays with his legs as well, and timely plays to get them in position. They weren't great on third down, but they had some fourth down conversions as well. So they were essentially 7 of 13 if you add the fourth downs as well. I thought Illinois looked really good in the second half, aided by those turnovers by Duke. And, you'll take it with a grain of salt. But, again, this is a huge win. They are setting themselves up for a big push in the Big Ten. Their schedule is tough, so we'll see. They play USC really quick here in the start of the season. I don't like their chances in that game, but, they looked good here. Duke's defense, I thought, was going to get the best of Illinois, but they really struggled. Illinois still put up 419 yards, so not a good game from Duke's defense, which is Manny Diaz's specialty, and they really kind of faltered there. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and the stat you said to just kind of describe how bad the score got in the second half was those 5 turnovers. And 4 fumbles lost. Ball security is a real struggle. You're not going to win games like that. Ask Florida State last year how many games they won when ball security was an issue. The other thing, too, is that Illinois was able to rely on the run game a bit. They had over 100 yards rushing, which I know wasn't, groundbreaking. But with Altmaier, he had, 3 touchdowns. I think he almost had 300 yards. It was able to kind of keep Duke off balance a bit, while Duke's offense, they had to rely on Mensa the whole game. And he did really good. I know he threw the interception and the fumble, but he did have over 300 yards. He did have 2 touchdowns. Yeah. So he did pretty good when they relied on him. It's just they couldn't get the job done, and Illinois was quick to take advantage of those turnovers.
Yeah, 3 turnovers by Mensa really hurt them, and the turnovers were the difference in the game. Okay, moving on to Baylor SMU. This was a shootout to really just back and forth the entire time. SMU had a lot of explosives, throughout this game. Sawyer Robertson looked great. 34-50 for 440 yards, 4 TDs. Huge game from him. Jennings looked great for SMU. Nearly 300 yards, 3 TDs. He did have a bad pick. They were back and forth. SMU had a chance to win it at the end, missed the field goal. They go to overtime. They trade touchdowns. They go to double overtime. SMU misses their field goal, so all Baylor needed was a field goal to win. So Baylor hits it. Baylor, after that loss to Auburn, now looking a lot better heading into Big 12 play. And, a win against a ranked SMU team is a big win, especially after looking bad against Auburn. So maybe they've, righted the ship. Maybe they can make something out of the season. Your thoughts, Ian, on this game?
Yeah, this one, too, it was in, throwback to the Southwest Conference. I remember mentioning that in the prediction video. But the one telling thing was, the lack of defense. But, man, giving up over 600 yards, even if it was you had extra, timing and overtime, is kind of insane.
It's insane.
But all in all, this is one of those games where it was a shame that somebody had to lose because both offenses were playing fantastic. But ultimately, the team that makes the most mistakes loses, and missing that extra, the field goal and the interception was a killer for SMU, and Baylor was quick to take advantage of it. So this is a really good bounce back for Aranda and Baylor, and they can move forward with this. SMU, that is a very tough loss because they had that win in their grasp, and it slips away. And now, they're looking moving on. They play Missouri State, but then they got to go on the road to TCU, and then you got a tough Syracuse team, and then Clemson down the road, and Miami. It's not looking easier now in conference.
Well, yeah, they got lucky last year, SMU, because their schedule was very soft for ACC opponents, and so now they're getting tougher opponents. They got Clemson, like you said, a tough Syracuse. I think Miami, right?
Yeah, they play Miami. I don't know if it's home. No. Is it home, or they might be in South Florida?
Either way, neither of those teams have fans at either of their games. So it doesn't matter. But no, it's a shame because, they looked great last year and they played their way into the playoff and played into the ACC championship game. But it may be a lot tougher chance to do that this year. And this doesn't look good already with a loss to Baylor, but I will say they lost to BYU last year to start the year, and they really kind of resurrected things. So we'll see. Let's move on to I'm not going to do FIU Penn State. That was a blowout. I only did that because FIU got that one vote in the AP poll, so I'm not really going to talk about it. Ole Miss, Kentucky. Austin Simmons looked really rough to begin this game, and they were down 10-0. And, it wasn't like Kentucky was doing something amazing. They just, Ole Miss was looking bad, with those bad interceptions by Austin Simmons. So, if you take those out of it, it was a little more even, but it didn't matter because Ole Miss really started to turn it on after they went down 10-0. I think they outscored them 30 to
it was 30 to 13 or something, or 30
something
to 10.
like that. Yeah. So they really put it to them. They had a lot of big explosive plays. Austin Simmons looked better after those interceptions. And, the run game was huge for Ole Miss. They had 220 yards on the ground. So, Ole Miss kind of, redeems themselves after last year's terrible loss to Kentucky. It really derailed their CFP hopes, and they win it this time. It's close. I mean, it was closer than it looked because Kentucky hit that field goal with 7 seconds left. It's such a sad interception or sad field goal. But no, Ole Miss basically wins by 2 scores pretty handedly, and they were clearly the better team in this game. Kentucky, I don't know where they go from here. Calzada looks okay, but he's looked okay his entire college career, so I don't know what to expect out of him more so than what it was in this game. No, your thoughts, Ian, on this game?
Yeah, and this was like Kentucky was deploying, the trap game beautifully. They were up 10-0, and one thing that does not get recognized, I think, enough from Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin is the running game. Now, obviously guys like, Matt Corral and Jackson Dart, the quarterback, they get a lot of shine and stuff. And they had, before transfer Quinshon Junkins. But the running game has been just as, a focal point as the passing game. And for Ole Miss, they were really able to rely on that attack, mostly from guys, like Kawan Lacey, Austin Simmons had some big runs as well. Yeah. They were able to get over 200 yards rushing. That was really the backbreaker for Kentucky. What got them back into the game and was able to make up for the, kind of lackluster first half from Simmons. Yeah. But that's one thing Ole Miss can rely on now is you can have a running game to depend on if Simmons is not really on it, which it's his first year as the starter. So, again, that could happen, but you have the safety net behind it. For Kentucky, they had that lead. They were at home, but it was like sliding down a grease pole. They just couldn't keep the Rebels out of the end zone. And it's just a tough loss for them.
Yeah, they're just not good enough. And no offense to Kentucky fans, my buddy Benjamin Haynes, hey brother, I know it, you guys are a basketball school, but it just is what it is. And Stoops is what he is. He's not that great of a coach. He's just, an okay coach. Okay, moving on. We have Oklahoma State, Oregon. Now, this was a blowout, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. But, Oklahoma State's not good. Their quarterback only threw for 60, 70 yards and, 7 of 19, 2 interceptions. Just, they got dominated. And Oregon looked pretty damn good. And, Dante Moore, I know people kind of, were whatever about him after he left UCLA. He sat for a year while Dylan Gabriel was the starter at Oregon. And he looks like he picked up where Dylan Gabriel left off. They went 13-0 last year. I don't think it's going to go that well this year for them, but it should go pretty swimmingly. So far, they blew out a Power 4 team pretty convincingly. They look like they called the dogs off in the fourth quarter because they didn't score any points. So they probably could have scored more, 80 points if they wanted to. I think I saw it was the worst loss in Oklahoma State history. Just a dominant performance, 631 yards to 211, just ridiculous. Your thoughts on this, Ian?
Yeah, I should have been playing the Amazing Grace by the bagpipe one for Gundy because time comes for most coaches, and this is, for Gundy, I've got a feeling this is it because this was a chance to at least make it competitive, and you get blown out by Oregon, which we knew was the better team, but I think it's, you want to talk about hot seats, I think Gundy's right up there. The last thing I want to say, thank you, Oregon, for having such an awesome score to finish the game with.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, this was a good game. Missouri beating Kansas 42-31. Kansas was leading for a good portion of this game. They were up 21-6 at the end of the first quarter. And then Missouri really came on in the second, scoring 15 straight, and to make that game 21 all at half. And, I'm surprised that Prebula did as well as he did. I am not expecting that at all. He was mainly a run-first option at Penn State, didn't throw the ball a ton there, and he threw it for 30 completions, 334 yards, and 3 TDs. Missouri's running back, I think it's Roberts? Jamal Roberts. Yeah, because I know his number is 29. I don't remember his name, but yeah. Oh, wait, no, that's Hardy. Sorry, Hardy. Hardy looks great, but Roberts looked good as well, number 20. And so you have like a two-headed monster there. They're going to put up a ton of yards. And then, yeah, yardage wise, God, this wasn't even close. It was 595 yards to 226. The beginning of that score was aided by, I believe, a scoop and score off of a fumble. And so, Kansas looked a lot better at first, but then Missouri just really took it to them, and Kansas could not stop them defensively. Third down for Missouri, they were 10 for 19 and 4 of 5 on fourth down. They were just moving the ball at will. Great win for them. I was totally surprised. I thought Kansas was going to come in and get the win. Missouri wins now, sets themselves up quite well because they have a soft SEC schedule, so they could do some things to possibly get in the playoff. It's going to be difficult considering their schedule is soft, like I said, but a win against a really good Power 4 is a good step in the right direction. Ian.
I'm gonna say this game as one of the examples to any NCAA athletic director out there who likes conference realignment. This is why you keep rivalries, and no matter what conference they're in. Again, we knew Missouri and Kansas, a historic rivalry, the border war, but keeping them and having them play each other, this game was an example of like how amazing rivalries are in college football and why we should keep them at all costs, because this was a perfect rivalry game, and Missouri, came back. I really thought I picked Kansas because, Jalen Daniels I thought was dynamic enough and was going to keep the defense on their toes. But the problem was that is all Kansas had.
Yeah.
And we didn't really see Pavula. Yeah, Pavula having the kind of game he was passing, but also the rushing attack, having two running backs rush for over 100 yards is insane for Missouri. And, yeah, the yardage discrepancy was wild, especially after the first quarter. It was all Tigers. But a fantastic game. Like I said, find a way to keep these teams on the schedule. I don't care what conference they're in, where there needs to be border war. You need to have backyard brawl of West Virginia Pitt every year. You need to have war on I-4. Miami and Florida should play each other every year. Oklahoma and Nebraska, all those should stay regardless of conference they're in.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's move on to Arizona State, Mississippi State. This was a wild game because Mississippi State was up 17-0, and it looked like they were going to roll and just steamroll them. And Leavitt looked terrible at first. Sam Leavitt was just not good for Arizona State, and they was like, okay, are they frauds? What's going on here? He had 2 interceptions, one late at the end of the game. The one earlier really kind of stymied them, but then, he got things going. They were making some drives, putting some drives together, and they tied it 17-7. They took a lead late, 20-17, and then Shapen with the long throw and the reception for a touchdown just completely redeemed themselves, and they win 24-20. Just huge win for Mississippi State. They might struggle the rest of the year against these really good SEC teams, so I feel bad for them, but a huge win to start off this year, and I really feel bad for Arizona State because now they're really behind the 8 ball, losing to a bad P4 team. But again, they have room to make it up for in the Big 12. They'll have plenty of big games to prove themselves. Ian, what's your take on this game?
For Mississippi State, this was as big of a win that they needed in Starkville. I said that was the best win Mississippi State, their fans have seen on their home field since the Egg Bowl in 2019 against Ole Miss. And that was the one where Elijah Moore did the dog pizza celebration and missed the extra point. It's obviously been a program that's been really down, and to have an upset like that, especially in the last second, was fantastic. For Arizona State, obviously the focus needs to be on the secondary. Not only on the last play, but, they were just getting carved up all night. And, Shapen had over almost 300 yards, and there wasn't much of a run game for Mississippi State, but it didn't matter. And I know, ever since with Mike Leach, it's been an air raid scheme, but obviously the progression has been to make it more balanced. But even when they were expecting pass, the secondary just flat out missed assignments. And for Arizona State, it was just an overall bad game. Levitt did not have a good game at all. He did throw a touchdown, but his completion percentage was not good. He threw the 2 picks, and the running game was good, had over 200 yards, but there was no complement to the passing game. And Mississippi State got a huge win for them, and a much-needed one for a fan base that's been dying for something to cheer for.
Okay, I want to hear your thoughts on Vanderbilt Vatek. I didn't get a chance to watch the highlight package.
Yeah, man, with Vandy and Vatek, they go. I said I picked Vatek to win this one, and kind of my fault. But I thought that atmosphere was going to be a little too much for Vandy, and I know this team is completely they're a veteran team. Nothing much shakes them. But I thought, early in the season, Drones, the quarterback, mobile quarterback, can make plays on his own. They almost beat, Vandy last year. It's a night game. They're going to be playing, Enter Sandman there. I had Vatek, but man, Vandy did not get shaken at all. The presence of, both Pavia and, Yun had almost 100 yards rushing, and the defense just completely shut down Vatek. And they had everything going for them in the first quarter. That's the thing I'm most impressed with Vanderbilt. Usually being down 10-0, we've seen years before, on the road at night, crowds going crazy. That's usually when Vandy would just lay down and die.
Yeah.
And they just completely were like, nope, we're flipping the script. And they scored, what was it? Almost like 40. It was something ridiculous. It was almost like 30 unanswered points going into the second half. They kept Vatek out of the end zone the entire second half. So
27.
Yeah, 27 unanswered points. Absolutely remarkable.
No, even more. It was 34. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
34
and they had almost 500 yards rushing. It was a really good game. But one thing was they did commit a lot of penalties. That's still something Vanderbilt needs to clean up. But, I mean, Vandy's, once again, a team you cannot look past over. I know they play South Carolina coming up, and that is not going to be an easy win because Vandy's kind of mentality is going to be, make you earn that win. They're not laying down anymore.
Yeah, I'm because if they beat South Carolina, they have easy ones against Georgia State and then Utah State. They could end up being into the Alabama game 5-0. Like that would be, and if they beat South Carolina, they would definitely be ranked. So they would probably be, like at least 15th by the time they played Alabama, and that would be crazy if they beat them again. But that game is in Tuscaloosa. We'll see. But let's move on. Game of the day. A lot of hype around this game. You got John Mateer at Oklahoma. You got Bryce Underwood at Michigan. And boy, did Underwood underperform. He was 9 of 24. His throws at times looked very good. And at other times, and most of the times, it was very bad. And he was not as advertised. He didn't run the ball really effectively. Outside of one large run from the Michigan running back from Haynes, they were largely held in check, like entirely. And so they get 2 field goals as well outside of other drives. But really, I thought Oklahoma was the better team throughout this entire game, and it wasn't really close. And Oklahoma kind of just was like playing with their food. Defensively, Oklahoma looks amazing. They look like they'll be able to play against any team in the SEC. And John Mateer, man, Mateer is a magician. And if you do not know the name John Mateer, I hope you know him after this game because this kid is dynamite. He did have the one bad interception and a couple of throws that were a little suspect, but he put up 270 through the air, 74 on the ground, 3 total TDs. The kid was just a monster. He's basically cemented himself with the Heisman frontrunner right now with a huge win against a huge ranked team. Their schedule is immensely tough, so they'll get tested throughout the year. So you'll see next week they play Auburn. They got Texas 2 weeks after that, or 3 weeks after that, then South Carolina, then Ole Miss, then Tennessee, then Alabama, then Missouri, then LSU. So it is a gauntlet, just like Florida's is a gauntlet. So they do get Temple and Kent State, so they get some easy ones there. But tough road for them. This John Mateer kid is a stud. I like his game a lot. I think it translates to the NFL. They looked good. Deion Burks had a huge game. He was from Michigan, so he had a lot of motivation to play well against them. And then as far as the rest of Oklahoma's run game wasn't really there outside of Mateer. They had some decent runs, but nothing more than a couple yards here and there. No one averaged more than 4 yards. Some of them like 2.7, 2.2. So not really a good average there. Oklahoma difference in this game was Oklahoma was 9 for 17 on third downs and 1 for 1 on fourth. So essentially they were 10 for 17 on conversions. And conversely, Michigan was 3 of 14 on third down and 0 and 1 on fourth down. So they were 3 of 15 on conversions. So that was really what stood out the most. There were those 2 turnovers by Oklahoma that kind of kept Michigan in the game. But if there weren't for that, this game would have been, a much bigger score. It could have been like 34-38 to like 10 game. Ian, I want to hear your take on this one.
Yeah, and this game, like another one I said, I had Oklahoma winning this one because I thought, like, if Arch Manning got rattled going into the horseshoe, I don't, it's tough for these guys, these first-year starters who have one of their first starts on the road in a big-time game. And for Underwood, yeah, and I'm not going to blame it on him. I mean, it's a tough environment in Norman. I mean, anybody can tell you that. At night, it's a tough game. But, obviously the defense, was getting to him, the pressure, especially from the edge. He wasn't able to roll out of the pocket like he, probably wanted to. And again, with the, what I was expecting with Oklahoma, that the linebacking, core, was hurt after the suspension, or not suspension. The linebacker was thrown out for the targeting call. And Mateer was able to run all over him with those quarterback runs and pass over him. The middle of the field was wide open for the Sooners, and they took full advantage of it. And that's ultimately what it came down to, is that Oklahoma was able to put enough points on the board to distance themselves. Once they, got to honestly like 14, I was thinking like, shoot, that might be enough, because I don't like. It was 14-0 at half, and I'm like, I don't see like Oklahoma letting this one slip. Because they were just all over Underwood. And, there was only so much they could do. The running game, at least Michigan, was, pretty good. I know, Justice Haynes had over 100 yards. But all in all, Oklahoma just looked better, played better. They were the better team, and they deserved to win.
Yeah, and shout out to Jaron Kanak with a huge game, 5 catches for 69 yards. So let's move on to the teams we cover, the last 2 games. USC going up against Georgia Southern. Dude, at one point, let me see where I had it because I was watching the whole game. Where was it? Jaden Mayava was 7 of 7 for 194 yards and 3 TDs. Yeah. And I was just like, good Lord. Like, he was just on fire to begin that game. Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane, dude, these kids had monster days. Wayman Jordan had a monster day. He had 167 yards on the ground. It was just, a feast by USC's offense. They could not be stopped. They were 412 yards by Mayava, 4 TDs, just monster games. The average, listen to these 3 averages for these wide receivers for USC: 39.5, 30.3, and 61.
Yeah.
Those are the averages. But just tremendous day. Georgia Southern did move the ball early, and the game looked closer early, but then in the second half, USC really shut them down, and they couldn't convert third downs, Georgia Southern, so it was really a struggle. USC, a lot of penalties, 8 penalties, really frustrating. Only had 1 turnover. but just dominated the game. 755 total yards, just ridiculous. Kind of nice balance for that much yardage. They had 446 passing yards and 309 rushing yards. So really good day from them. The schedule gets a lot tougher after starting next week. They have Michigan State, then Illinois, then Michigan. So it's going to get tough really quick, and then Notre Dame. So those easy games are done with. Now starts the meat of their schedule. Oh, they got Purdue. Sorry, I forgot they got Purdue next week. I did see a Purdue podcast predicting that Purdue was going to beat USC. I don't think so, man. There's no way. USC is just too good on offense. Yeah. They score way too much. Your thoughts, and then we'll move on to the last one.
Yeah, having over 300 yards in general on both sides of the offense, I don't care who you're playing, that is pretty crazy. USC's offense is clicking on all cylinders. Big thing, though, like we've expected with Lincoln Riley and USC is like, yeah, we know how good they are. Now it's about keeping it going forward. They go on the road to Purdue, and then they're going to have to go a few weeks later on the road to Illinois. That'll be a huge game for them to really, see where they're at. We know, Maeva has looked fantastic, and the running game has been there as well. So it's all about, keeping up momentum. Defense obviously looks good, even though they let up a lot of really long drives to Georgia Southern. But, in the end, USC, good win. But like you said, now it's about moving forward with the momentum.
Okay, last one. We got UCLA, and it looked terrible. They were down 23-0 at one point, and they could have easily packed it in. Orgy for UNLV gets hurt. In comes Anthony Calandria, who played pretty well, 15 of 21 for UNLV, 203 yards, 3 TDs. But then really second half was all UCLA. They outscored them 20-7 in the second half, and they had the ball at the end to be able to tie, and Nico threw that interception. I mean, the start was terrible, and the sad thing is the highlight package I had did not include the first first quarter and a half, so I didn't get a chance to see why it was so bad for UCLA. But in the second half, they looked a lot better. They were moving the ball, they were able to make some plays. The receivers looked really good second half compared to the first half, and the run game is still not there, which is frustrating. Some reason it's just not getting the push off the offensive line. And Quasi Gilmer had a good game. It looks like it's almost there. And I know that with a team that you don't have the quarterback there for spring ball and up most of the first half of the year, this is playing catch up again. You look at it with Florida as well. When you're playing catch up with your quarterback, it kind of struggles, and they looked like they're a team that didn't have their quarterback to begin with. So they're implementing it. I think they're getting there. Defensively, they struggled, and that was really disappointing because they really were, they should have been better than a group of 5 team. Like, they're a power 4 team. They defensively, they got to be able to make some plays there and get off the field. UNLV was 5 of 10 on third down and fourth down conversion. So they're 5 of 11 or 5 of 10 or 6 of 10. Sorry, 6 of 10 on conversion. So more than 50%, not good. Ton of penalties for UCLA again. There were countless plays where they were making plays. There was a pick 6 situation where it was counted as a sack. So many times where it looked like UCLA was going to make the difference in the game. They just couldn't. I'm not writing off the ship just yet. This is still early. They have, I believe, a cupcake game next week, which they play New Mexico. They should beat New Mexico, and then Northwestern is not a good team. So hopefully they win the next 2 games. They go 2-2, and then we'll see what happens when they play Penn State in the beginning of the month of October. So. Again, it's just the start. There's plenty of season to play, just like with Florida. And I feel the same way I think, people that get so frustrated or like writing teams off right away is really missing mistaking the forest for I'm saying the cliche wrong, but they're not understanding that it's a long season and that there's still a lot to play for, and that yes, it looks bad right now, but that doesn't mean that it's going to end bad, and there's a chance that it could be better, especially with the play like quarterback where Nico is a very solid quarterback, and I like the things that he was doing in that second half. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and for me, this game, one of the most telling things of just how both programs are at. Both teams had over 100 yards of penalties. I'm like, oh my God, do you guys really want to win this game? Because you're definitely not showing it.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time I saw a game like that. That didn't include both teams fighting for personal fouls. You see that with rivalry games, but those technically don't matter.
Yeah.
But for me with UCLA, it kind of is telling me that this offense is going to live and die off Imaliava. And whether, they said one of the reasons he left Tennessee was that because of the offense, and maybe it wasn't around, focused around him or something like that. Well, now it is.
Yeah.
And you have lost 2 games in a row now, and one of them was a really bad loss to Utah, and then you get a bad loss to UNLV, a team you, on paper, should beat. So in order to get this working, Imaliava has to play better. He's been okay, but those interceptions and the pick 6 was terrible. And, there needs to be, to help out, it would be nice to have a running game to complement it, but they don't have that right now. They're forced to rely on Imaliava to win the game on every play, and you can't win the game on one player. I don't care who you are. So for UCLA, the defense, they kind of got exposed. Dan Mullen did a good job of X's and O wise, finding, weakness in the secondary. And even when Orgy went down, they were able to change the game plan from an RPO type to a more, vertical game. But for UCLA, they have New Mexico at home. And then, like you said, coming up to the Penn State game, we're going to see where the team is at. Imaliava has to get into the flow of the game quicker so they are not behind and trying to play catch-up. I think that's going to be the telling thing for UCLA. They have to stop playing catch-up in these games.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go down 23-0.
Yeah.
You're not going to win these games. You're just not. And I think that, the fact that, UCLA still stayed in this game and had a chance at the end, I think that will be what they need to build upon here. And I think they can. I think there's a chance to really make a difference in the way things were done. But last thing I wanted to do, Ian, did you have your group of 5 team of the week? We're going to start.
I have. So I'm not thinking I'm going to do this every week with the honorable mentions, but clearly it's USF. It has to be USF, not only for beating Florida in the swamp and doing what none of the other group of 5 Florida teams have done, and that's beat all the big 3 Florida teams, but also, 2 weeks in a row beating a ranked team that they were not favored in, and now being favorites. It had to be USF. I do want to give an honorable mention. I remember saying this. It was going to be tough if USF didn't win, deciding these 2. Was either the Ohio Bobcats beating West Virginia 17-7. I understand West Virginia is in a rebuilding year, but going on the road to Morgantown is not easy.
No.
And they were able to get the win. That was their first Power 5 win since 2017. And then Army coming back from an embarrassing, loss last week, losing to a Division II or FCS team to beat our Big 12 favorite of Kansas State, it looks like Kent State, is absolutely insane. So those were my honorable mentions, was Army beating Kansas State and Ohio beating West Virginia, but the winner had to be USF.
Nice. Okay, we will do that every week now. The G5 Gibson's G5 teams of the week. But that's the show. I apologize for not having the show last night when we normally do. So look for the show. Like I said, Sunday and Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Tonight was just a one-off. We'll keep it traditional. Again, Florida fans, I know it's frustrating. I know it is what it is, but you just have to let it play out. There's plenty of talent, and if Billy gets fired, it's not the end of the world because some great coach will come in and take advantage of this talent and make the best of it. So, and even if not, if Billy turns it around, then even better, whatever. Then he does as well. So I'm not worried about it. Monumental win for USF. I'm excited for them, the potential of the future. Follow Ian at G5_Gibson. Follow us at Hater Radio for all the socials. Again, you'll find the show on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for watching the show. We'll talk to you guys on Wednesday, and take care.